The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. As David is in with us. David is wearing a Georgia jersey. I'm kidding. But he is in observing and is probably not going to send me a Christmas card. It's all right. We will talk it out. 2 hours today. Nebraska fans, frustrated Nebraska fans, saddened. But many of you, Nebraska fans, not surprised about Dylan Raiola posting the home and then the Georgia logo with his commitment announcement. That was around noon today. Wish Dylan Raiola, the Raiola family, the absolute best. You and I, no pun intended here, Elijah, don't have a dog in the fight. We just get to talk about it a lot with the recruiting game. And then let's see how those recruits translate on the field and what's the win, the loss, and the competition level record like. Nebraska is trying to get back to being competitive, get back to being a champion. Georgia, right now, I mean, their ashtray is full, baby, with those victory cigars and what they've done with back-to-back national championships. Can join us today here on Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240, 489-1240, and can also email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. You're welcome to watch and check in on the StreamYard, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and then the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. We'll tackle what's next for Nebraska with the quarterback spot. We'll tackle the perception and reality discussion that is a part of this, and then we'll kind of get into the why. Let me ask you this. What do you think? Do you think Nebraska finished a legit second? Or does it look like the Big Ten baseball standings right now where it's a jumbled mess and then you have a top spot? And I think Nebraska probably, if we're going to revisit the Kentucky Derby, I think Nebraska was, dare I even say, leading for a little bit or nose to nose with Georgia for a little while. And then I think Kirby Smart and Georgia and their on-field production just won out. No?
I think something swung on that unofficial visit at the end of March. That's whenever it really feel like the tide started turning. Because when he was in town for that basketball game,
that was February.
He started getting some national recruiting analysts saying Nebraska's gaining some steam. It's looking good. You had people.
And then I think Kirby said, "I'm going to put a stop to this."
And I think he took a visit down to Georgia, took that unofficial to Nebraska.
The 25th.
Shortly following that, canceled his visit to the spring game. I think something swung that unofficial recruiting weekend in Nebraska. I'm not saying it went poorly. It could have just been a case of showing up. I like it here, but I like Georgia better. Something swung that weekend because that seemed to be the flashpoint moment of when the momentum flipped from Nebraska's gaining to Nebraska is now falling behind Georgia.
Sure. Well, where it may have cooled. And you have Steve Wildfong, national analyst with 24/7 Sports. He had talked to Raiola. You have On Three's national folks as well, also with some quotes. And the process of when they would leave Georgia, it just felt incredible. They love the culture. They love the competition. They love the winning. And I'm paraphrasing all of this. And then I don't think it was a situation where there wasn't love or intrigue or interest in Nebraska, but it's just two different spots. It's just absolutely two different spots with how do you want your college experience to be? And the experience, and Ari Wasserman with The Athletic has an incredible story. And the story is more about this would have been awesome for college football if Dylan Raiola would have chose Nebraska. Because in summation, you have about 5 or 6 teams that can go win the national championship every year. And it's the same 5 or 6 football teams because they win these recruiting battles. And they just keep stockpiling. They just keep stacking, and good on them. Nebraska's 25 years removed from it, but they did the same thing. It wasn't an accident where Nebraska went and got a guy like a Wistrom or a Mike Rucker who ended up being first and second round picks as they waited a year or two to then go kill people off the edge as a defensive end. I mean, Nebraska's done this before. They just haven't done it recently, and they're trying to get back to it. But the storybook would have been, okay, you've got a program that's a blue blood that's fallen on hard times. You have the new coach, you have the new vision, and you have the number one player that can absolutely flip the trajectory of a program. That was on his shoulders if he comes to Lincoln. If he goes to Georgia and is just he can be and may be a great at Georgia. They may be talking about Dylan Raiola the same way they talk about Matt Stafford. How Georgia had been kind of an 8-4, 9-3, and then bang, all of a sudden they're a top 3 team in the country, and they're inches away from beating Alabama for a national championship. That's how good Stafford was, and that's what he took with him to Detroit. I mean, Detroit jumped up once Stafford got there. They were better than they had been in a while, post Barry Sanders era. But the sales pitch was, I think, very compelling by Matt Rhule. This hurts. This isn't good, but you got to, keep on dancing, so to speak. If you're Nebraska, you can't do anything about it except keep the door open if it ever comes to that, right? Not burn a bridge.
Well, I almost compare it to LeBron James going to Miami in that big summer whenever he made the decision. I know that might sound crazy, but Cleveland hadn't won anything in a long time. He was there. He took him to the playoffs.
Did everything he could. Took him about as far as he could. And I'm not comparing that explicitly to Dylan Raiola, but I look at this as, you know what? LeBron wanted to go play with the best of the best in a place, warm weather, awesome place to live, great fan support. Go get me some help.
A history of winning.
Go get me some help.
They have help. And if things didn't work out in Miami, that Cleveland always would have welcomed LeBron back with open arms, despite the fact that they were burning his jersey in the streets.
They did.
And they did. LeBron goes back, and guess what? Cleveland, during that time, they didn't have LeBron. They got the number 1 overall pick. They picked Kyrie Irving. They made some progress. And LeBron, after getting some winning done in Miami, said, you know what? I'm going to go back to Cleveland, a place that always has a soft spot in my heart. And I'm not saying it's the perfect comparison, but that's kind of how I see it. LeBron, looking back, had no reason to stay in Cleveland. And I don't think Dylan Raiola had a great reason to be at Nebraska aside from the family legacy. I think if you're being rational, Georgia made the most sense for him. Great talent. They win football games. And guess what? Nebraska, if things don't work out for you at Georgia, will always welcome you back with open arms.
Well, and there is this. It's what needs to happen. You had your pitch if you're Matt Rhule, and come on home, your real home, where your uncle's coaching, where your dad's played, and his name's up on North Stadium. He's the first ever Remington Award winner. I mean, Dom is incredible. And that offensive line he captained was fantastic. And they were right there for a national championship. Come home, fix the program, do Dad proud, follow in Dad's footsteps, be there with Uncle Donnie, and what a movie it could have been. And then, boom, Nebraska, you're going to accelerate that rise. And the other script you have in front of you is, well, this is where guys like you go. Okay, this is where Nick Chubb goes. This is where Uncle Matt goes. This is pick a first-round defensive lineman or linebacker or wideout or tight end. I mean, Georgia's just sick with talent and loaded. This is where guys like you go. You go to Alabama, you go to Clemson, you go to Texas, even though Texas isn't great right now, but you go to these landing spots. Nebraska, for them to be in it, and I'm trying to put some aloe on this wound, if you're a Nebraska fan, is for Nebraska to be this deep in the pool is commendable by Matt Rhule, okay? And I hope it sends a sign, if you're a Nebraska fan, to other big-time players that, all right, I really like what this guy's selling. And Rhule, I think, has kind of hinted about this in weeks leading up with some of his comments, even right before the spring game or after the spring game on a couple of podcasts he's done. I love guys. They have a special place in my heart, again, paraphrasing, who buy in and commit to us without proof. You can believe what I'm going to say, and it's going to be the blind faith part. This is what's going to happen. And you're all in. You don't need to see it happen a year or two. That's easier said than done for a lot of folks. But this is a tough shot for Nebraska. They can rally. They can figure out their quarterback situation. We'll get to that next segment. But this could have been a moment where it is program changing for Nebraska. Turner Gill, 1978. Tommy Frazier, 1992. And then as we continue to heap on all sorts of pressure to be the next greatest and be the greatest, I mean, really it was a lot like Peyton Manning going to Tennessee or even Eli coming to Ole Miss. I know there was no Tennessee connection other than Coach Cutcliffe, but that's the impact where guys, to your LeBron point, they were as every inch as good as advertised, and they delivered to the best of their ability. Now it's up to Rhule when we talk about pitch and program standing is changed the conversation. Okay, the next time you're in a recruiting fight like this, you're going to have something in your back pocket if you're Nebraska and Matt Rhule, if things go to plan. And then that piece of paper is a win total and proof on the field. And that has got to be what happens next, and you're going to have to do it next year and maybe the year after that without a Dylan Raiola.
And before we get to the phone lines here, it's funny you mentioned the Manning family, Peyton Manning, because Peyton didn't follow in Dad's footsteps. Went off to Tennessee, became a great quarterback. Else. He was the number one player in the country coming out of high school.
And he started as a true freshman.
And was great there.
Was ready. And
then you have a little brother who does go and follow Dad's footsteps out the alma mater. And, hey, he did pretty well for himself at Ole Miss and then in the NFL, too. Mm-hmm. So a bit of an interesting comparison there. Don't quote me on that in 5 years as being the Raiolas and the Mannings are similar families like that. But, hey, it's something to watch.
Well, Dylan's got a little brother. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
As a young pup. Paul with us?
Paul's with us on the line.
Paul, thanks for hanging. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Stupid question. A couple of years from now, if he doesn't pan off at Georgia, do you take him and transfer like Joe Burrow, or do you think maybe if he can't make it at Georgia, should we take a chance on him here?
Absolutely. I mean, that listen, and you don't want it to go sideways or south for Raiola at Georgia. I mean, you wish the kid the best and go in and win the job or redshirt and then take the job and perform well. But if there is a situation like a lot of other top-tier quarterbacks, they end up leaving.
So what you're saying is we got a chance.
I'm saying don't do anything to destroy that bridge.
Sure.
Should I go there? Sure. I mean,
especially with a younger brother coming through the pipeline.
Well, let me just say this for you, Paul. You have Carson Beck, Brock Vandegraff, you have Gunnar Stockton, you have Ryan Puglisi, and now you have Dylan Raiola. That's the 5th-ranked quarterback, the 5th-ranked quarterback, the 7th-ranked quarterback, the 12th-ranked quarterback in this class, and then you have Raiola in the top quarterback in this class. So you have, carry the one, you have 3 4-stars and 2 5-stars now in that quarterback room if you're Georgia. So one of them
sounds a little crowded.
Yeah, not everyone's staying, but you wouldn't think. But no, you just keep all options open. That is your next option if you're Nebraska. You go portal if you don't like the high school option.
Well, I think the question that you're going to have to ask yourself come 2-3 years from now, should Dylan be in the transfer portal, is he better than what we've got?
No, that's way too soon. Paul, thanks for the phone call, bud.
Thanks,
guys. Look at you. Just get a T-shirt going, all right, and just break that out. Every time there's recruiting news, have it on standby. It's like your fire uniform. You just put it on, and it's a T-shirt that says, "Is he better than what we got?"
Well, it's but it is like I think that's kind of Paul's point. Do you want to deal with the drama of a transfer quarterback? We were here 3 years ago. It's funny he mentioned Joe Burrow because I think you have to say, especially at a quarterback room with what Matt Rhule's emphasized in his first 6 months on the job, he's going to want to bring in competition. I don't care if you have an entrenched starter. I don't care if you bring in a four-star in the class of 2024 that starts as a true freshman and is great, lighting the world on fire. Are you going to say no to the legacy in Dylan Raiola should he transfer someday? I don't think so.
But it comes down to the work you do in recruiting. We'll get to your comments in the stream here in just 2 seconds. We'll read those out. We'll post them up for you. It's a mentality. And I think Raiola has a winner's mentality because of what he's chosen to walk into. He's chosen to walk in the mother of all crowded quarterback rooms. So I can't say, and I don't agree with, well, the kid doesn't want to compete or he wants that job handed to him. Everybody would prefer that, but that's just not how they're wired, okay? And he doesn't go to Georgia for anything, but this is where it gives me the best chance to fulfill my dreams, which is go win some football games in college and then go be a NFL draft pick and be a quarterback in the NFL. I mean, that's what the kid wants to do.
And let's not forget, he's going to go to a place that's going to take care of him financially as well while he tries to chase that dream.
Right.
And I'm not saying Nebraska wouldn't have.
No, Nebraska absolutely would have. It comes down to what am I surrounded with?
Yeah.
We don't have that answer, and we know it's not what Georgia's done or has. Your comments, your phone calls, 489-1240 coming up.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Get to your stream comments. We'll take some of your calls, 489-1240. Emails to get into as well. Reaction to Dylan Raiola going to Georgia. And surprise, not really. If you're a Nebraska fan, disappointed, totally get it. And what now for the Big Red? Let's go to the StreamYard and get some of the comments read for you. Brennan chimes in, maybe unpopular opinion here, but I'm kind of glad he chose Georgia. The amount of pressure on the kid here was the amount of pressure on the kid here was shaking out to be tenfold. What it was on Frost. So that's yeah. You're Scott Frost. You're supposed to come back and lead you to the promised land. Okay, that's his coach. All right, come back here and be Tommy Frazier and Turner Gill all rolled into one, and take this program from 3-9, 4-8, 5-7, and do it right now.
And hey, while you're at it, anytime you're out in public, you're going to be taking pictures with babies, and there's going to be adults asking for your autograph, and there's a different kind of pressure. Let's not act like there's not pressure at the defending national champion as well when you go in there to go be great.
It's just you know what though? It's pressure to go win, go be another champion winning quarterback, or keep Georgia at this peak of the college football mountain with Alabama and LSU and Clemson and all those schools. So maintain greatness.
It's different whenever you're being asked to be a savior. Or
go make us great again.
Yes. Come save our football program.
And I don't play. I shouldn't say us, but go make them great again. So that is, but it's super too unique. All right, there's a fork in the road here, and they're both awesome and terrifying. They could be, but you're built and wired a little bit different with that special ability you have at quarterback. I think it says a hell of a lot for him to go to Georgia and choose Georgia, and the Bobo and Stafford combo along with Kirby. And let's just lay this out. We'll get to the phones here in a minute. Georgia does what Georgia does. What was Matt Rhule doing 3 years ago? He's trying to figure out a quarterback situation in Carolina. What was Georgia doing 3 years ago? Hey, let's get a look at Dom's kid. Uncle Matt says we should look at Dom's kid, and let's offer him in 2021. He's a freshman. Let's get him in here to camp. Let's get a look at him. Georgia was recruiting him for 3 years. And 2 of the last 3 years, they've won a national championship. 2 of the last 3 years, they've beaten Alabama. 2 of the last 3 years, all they've done is put the fat, angry guys that are chasing the quarterback during practice in the first round. I mean, so Georgia's been a recruiting machine forever. The difference now is what they've become under Kirby Smart.
Mm-hmm.
They've absolutely maximized all that talent. Who's on the horn?
You got Pete on the line.
Pete, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
How you doing?
We're good. What do you know, Pete?
Oh, not too much. I guess it's too bad he ain't coming to Nebraska, but I think it's going to be hard for us to get a high-profile quarterback until we get a much improved offensive line. If you look at like Martinez, they're running for their life. Some guys are coming through unblocked. And I think the high-profile guys have a good chance to make the NFL. So I think they look at it and say, hey, the risk of getting injured at Nebraska because of the offensive line is not worth coming to Nebraska. I'd rather go to where they've got NFL talent on the offensive line. And so I think you have to really start with the offensive line. It has to improve. And if it improves, you start winning games. And I think eventually we'll probably get high-profile quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's my take.
Hey, Pete, thanks for the phone call. No, there's absolutely some risk assessment / business decision involved with this. And when you look at the Georgia environment, what they have, and I think their environment's really not different than what Matt Rhule wants to do in Lincoln or will do in Lincoln and did at Baylor. And I think what he did at Temple, it is a grinder mentality. You got to come in here and work and earn, okay? And I think that is absolutely going to be the case because Georgia, it's like kid yourself. I mean, they've ran off 4- and 5-star guys because they've got another one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Justin Fields, great example.
Yeah. Justin, why don't you go to Ohio? Okay. I'm not saying they ran him off, but he clearly wanted a change of scenery. I mean, Georgia's, listen, they're not a stranger to the 5-star quarterback. You have Jacob Eason, who ended up, I think, transferring
to Washington. Correct.
To Washington, where he's from, because he could not unseat Fromm. Okay, and Fromm was, I think, probably a 4-star. You had Justin Fields. You have that Brock Vandergriff that is part of this last class. So Georgia's got it. Georgia's last first-round quarterback pick, though, is Uncle Matt Stafford.
Well, they also have a great history of their higher recruits being stuck on the bench because you talk about Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm played a lot at Georgia, and he won out starting jobs, as you mentioned, over Eason and over Justin Fields. Both those guys left. Both those high-profile recruits that went to Georgia. Jake Fromm's the guy who gets the job. Stetson Bennett went and beat out numerous 4- and 5-stars for that Georgia quarterback job year after year after year. So I don't think that Raiola is going to be walking into a place where, as the 5-star quarterback in this room surrounded by 4-stars, you're going to get that. It's going to be healthy competition.
You 5-stars, you guys are over there. There's like 30 of you just waving at one another. Matthew chimes in here, 489-1240. Matthew, his take on the Raiola decision. Raiola wasn't a fit, doesn't want to run the ball, and he's slow.
I understand.
I'm never going to call anybody slow. That's just my rule.
I understand where he's coming from, but we had a couple clips on the show from that Matt Rhule sit-down with College Football Daily where he talked about the offense and his vision, and like the preference is, we want to have a running quarterback, but we're not going to say no to a guy who can throw the ball all over the field. We're going to make sure we have a running game for that quarterback.
There's a high level of flexibility based on your talent.
We're going to develop an offense that has a running back and a running game that is centered around the running back position so our quarterback can sling the ball all over the field. But, hey, if our quarterback can run the football, we're going to create an offense that's suited to his talent. That's essentially what Matt Rhule said. Now, is that actually what it's going to be like in practice? And I guess you should say in reality, we'll see. But he said he's willing to have a quarterback who is going to be more of I don't want to say a statue because the statue quarterback doesn't really exist in football anymore, but a guy who's a pocket passer. He's not unwilling to have that guy.
His comp, and it ain't fair, but his comp is Mahomes. Height, weight, fluidity, mobility, arm strength. I mean,
his ability to throw off platforms.
Yeah, you watch him perform, and he reminds you of Mahomes. Crew chimes in. Both of these takes above me are idiotic, to say the least. Raiola wasn't a fit because he wasn't a mobile quarterback. I'm glad he went to Georgia because of the pressure cooker. That is very real, and I think it takes a special when Turner showed up to Lincoln and Nebraska fought to get Turner Gill to commit to Lincoln over Oklahoma. Okay, and Turner was different because he would have been another in the long line of incredible option quarterbacks that went to Oklahoma. And he chose Nebraska. And Turner Gill was phenomenal, and that's why Nebraska started beating Oklahoma, was in part because of what Turner Gill did. And they switched the offense from a kind of a spread passing attack to some power option football because of how great Turner was and is playing quarterback. You go to Tommy Frazier. Nebraska, Notre Dame, Colorado, Clemson. I mean, that's kind of the four. And you had one offense switching. Colorado was moving away from the option to a one-back. Clemson was just kind of there and not quite at Nebraska's mystique. And rumor is they didn't have a McDonald's there. And I'm not being a smartass here. I mean, it's a story I was told, like, well, Clemson was just too small a town. And then there's Notre Dame. So, listen, you had different areas of where the program was. Nebraska's 10-2 and couldn't beat Oklahoma. Turner wanted to be the guy that came in and helped beat Oklahoma. Tommy Frazier, Nebraska was 9-3-ish, winning the Big Eight. Great. They're in the Orange Bowl every year, so there's front and center for you to see it and take us over the top. Be the guy that gets us beyond Colorado and wins a national championship. And he's like, done. Let's go do it. And, 6 games in as a freshman, things are incredibly different for Nebraska, and they're competing and eventually beating the Florida schools, and you still want one more shot at Florida State. It's not dissimilar, except Nebraska is so much further down right now compared to where they were in 91, compared to where they were in 78. I mean, they were top 15, top 10, still good. They were 10-2 good. And now, I mean, who knows? Who knows if it would have accelerated this reboot by Rhule?
Or who knows if it turns into a Josh Allen situation at Wyoming where you have a quarterback that's immensely talented, that's always running for his life and doesn't have any open receivers to throw it to.
Well, right. And Josh Allen, that's a good take with just what he was in college versus what he is in pros.
He was toolsy in college, but he wasn't very good.
No, the guy, he threw 5 picks against Nebraska. Look at us pile on old Joshy. But no, it's just a different spot, and it's commendable Nebraska was in it.
I like the anonymous comment we just got in here in the StreamYard, trying to get a positive spin from literally anonymous. Carter Nelson won't be going to Georgia now after spending the big recruiting weekend with Raiola in March. He ended up thinking that Raiola is a complete jerk and he will never go to the same place. Obviously, this is from an anonymous comment in. No idea where this is coming from. No idea if there's any truth to this whatsoever.
You can watch and see us, so this is not burner account 101 on us, but Carter Nelson's supposed to be visiting Georgia, I think the same weekend Dylan was supposed to have his official visit. Still may go kick it down there in Athens. Sal checks in. Sal says, let's face it, the kid is a great athlete, and I wish him the best. We also want players who truly bleed red.
I like that.
Yeah, well.
I think that's a fair take on today. You know what? Nebraska didn't get the kid. That stings a little bit, but at the end of the day, he's the son of a Husker great, so you wish him the best for that reason. I'm not saying I'm going to go buy myself a Raiola Georgia jersey, but you wish him the best. You hope that he finds a landing spot that is going to work for him because of his connection to Nebraska. And at the end of the day, if he wanted to pick somewhere else that wasn't Nebraska, you just got to wish him the best because, as was laid out, you want a guy who bleeds red. You want a guy who wants to be here. Not a guy who feels pressured to be here because of who his dad is. Not a guy that's here because of the money. You want a guy who wants to be a Husker.
Well, and I think he has no problems with being a Husker. He just wants to be a bulldog more. And again, it's program standing, and right now it's just hope that's being sold. You have results in your face at Georgia. Now, the task at hand for Nebraska, get it flipped around. What's Nebraska do next at quarterback? We'll talk about it on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Take in the recruiting wars and also thoughts on Dylan Raiola. Of course, Charlie close with Dom. They were there at the same time, and Interesting to get Coach McBride's perspective. Jay Moore also spends time with us. Jay, of course, with Big Red Wrap-Up. The Blackshirt Hour commences. More of your comments, feedback, and reaction. 489-1240. Can also email Chris at HailVarsity.com. We'll get to more of the stream comments. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. When did you punt on this? I think I punted on Raiola coming to Nebraska. I think about the time I would say April. I would say
right around spring game time.
When he wasn't coming back for the spring game, I thought it was probably done.
I didn't think it was done at that point, but you could feel the winds turning, and then with some comments that come out from Raiola about Georgia and some of the national recruiting insiders laying out some crystal balls, some of those guys that you would think would be in the know.
Because Dan Orlovsky last night set the world on fire with
big things happening in Georgia. Yeah, and then everyone tied the dots together of, oh, yeah, Dan played with Dominic Raiola in Detroit for a couple of years. This guy's probably in the know.
Yeah, just a bit. More comments here. Mitchell chimes in. Raiola wants what's best for him and his future, and right now that's Georgia and the potential for some natties. I think we're still in the race until he becomes a starter at Georgia. So that timeline, Mitchell, is unique there, and I don't know that it's out of the realm of possibility that there's a transfer. I mean, I hate to even go there. It's not that I'm not thinking about it, but I hate to even go there. The kid just announced today, and in the world of college football, you can murmur, well, based on the fact that a 5 or 4-star quarterback's in another crowded room of 5 or 4-star quarterbacks, everyone else loses quarterbacks. Georgia's lost quarterback. Nebraska just had 3 transfer out, right? So
we've talked about this before.
You can't shut the door on it.
You can't shut the door on it, no matter who the kid is, whether or not it's the number 1 player in the country, whether or not it's some kid that was a 3-star that you really liked that didn't quite work out at his first stop. Doesn't matter who the kid is, but also we've talked about it ad nauseum on the show. You don't build a program through the transfer portal. It's as simple as that.
You can supplement.
You can supplement. Yeah, sure, maybe you need a quarterback in a couple of years, and Dylan can come help you out. Sure, but now that he's off to Georgia, he is, like, we're going to talk about him today, and then hopefully we're not going to talk about him again unless there is a decommitment or a transfer, just because there's so many other more important things to discuss for Nebraska. Like this would have been a huge pull for Nebraska. Could they have gotten Dylan Raiola? Would have been huge.
His talent, and then the domino effect of who else is, the old Jerry Maguire seeing. He's got his goldfish in one hand and air in the other. Who's coming with me, right? Mm-hmm. And
I just think the thought of maybe he'll transfer back, it gives me a crying over spilled milk type of feel. That's how recruiting is going to be. There's going to be guys that are going to go elsewhere. You're going to give it your all, and no matter what you do, they're still going to go elsewhere. I'm more concerned about where Matt Rhule and his staff go now for their class of 2024.
Well, and let's get there. One more comment, and this is straight truth by Bianca. This really hurts Nebraska that they didn't land him. And I'm sure you're just absolutely ticked if you're Coach Rhule and staff, but you also understand that it's part of the game, and you adapt and adjust to it. You got to get it figured out. You got to go and pick up the pieces here and figure out, all right, is November our timeline for another quarterback? Right now, they got to get Sims locked and loaded. They've got to get Harburg ready to rock and roll. They got to make sure Purdy is good to go. The here and now is 2023. And what do you do in season so you've got evidence to show the next 5-star or 4-star you offer or are deep in a race with into April of 2024, a year from now? What can you show that happened on the field?
I mean, there's still 5-stars and 4-stars Nebraska's in on in this class. You think of Brandon Baker?
No, he's
from California.
He's absolutely enthralled with Nebraska for them to be as deep as they are with a lot of these kids. And good on Nebraska for it. It's a lot like, and we're talking to Barnett about this, he's wowed because he's lived it. I mean, he's had to go recruit when they've gone 0-10 or 1-10. And how do you go do that? How do you go get dudes and difference makers for bad football teams? It's really tough. You just got to be incredible at evaluation. And I think Matt Rhule is really, really good at evaluation. You've got Kamari McClellan. He's a 3-star quarterback that does not have an offer yet for Nebraska. He is out of Alabama. He's supposed to do an unofficial June visit. Talented kid. Dante Reno, he's out of Massachusetts. He's locked in with South Carolina, but he's got the Satterfield connection. Do you try Elijah and go flip Daniel Kalen? Really talented quarterback out of Bell West. He is all about Missouri. Nebraska was up front with him that they have to go big here and go try and get Dylan Raiola. So timing-wise, we love you, but you're not Dylan, so that's where our priority's at. They can come back to him, I think, just because of how upfront they were from the get-go with him. You're not going to. It is. You're not going to get a flip. Oh, I'm good enough for you now. I mean, I hope. Maybe feelings are hurt. I don't know.
I mean, there's a guy out there, Stone Saunders, tweeted today. Stone Saunders, quarterback recruit, high 3-star, low 4-star, depending where you find him. Immediately following the Dylan Raiola news today, he tweeted out, "Go Big Red" with a question mark.
I remember that name.
He was in town, I think, for the spring game.
Mm-hmm. Is he 2025? 2024. Who's on the horn?
We got Bruce on the line.
Bruce, thanks for calling. Go ahead. Bruce.
Brother Chris.
Brother Bruce.
I haven't talked to you for a while.
What do you know?
Hey, you know what? I know a lot, man. First of all, I still have to apologize to Joel Makovica for mistaking him for Herbalescence from a year ago. Remember that?
That's right.
I'll let you fill in all the gory details.
Now that Nebraska's using a fullback again, you better stay clear. But go for it.
So anyway, my take is that regardless, this is actually good for Nebraska for bringing in some really high quality quarterbacks and players too, because the old Dylan Raiola thing, okay, that brought relevance back to Nebraska. All we have to do next year is go out, and these kids got to play for Matt Rhule, okay, and show this is going to work, and we're going to have a lot of heads that are turning, and you're going to have a lot of those kids that are out there for a year from now or 2 years from now saying, wow, I can see why Dylan wanted to go there, and he was a 5-star, and you're going to get a lot of that, I think, coming in because he made us relevant again. I think that's an important point to look at.
Okay, Bruce, and I think that's a solid take. Thanks for the phone call, brother. We're up against a hard one. Thanks for listening, brother, as long as you have. That's fair. So you didn't get him, but at least you got him to come check you out. You're worthy of some interest.
I just think it's funny that he said all you have to do is go out there and essentially win some games. Paraphrasing him. It's all you have to do. It's not that hard.
You absolutely have to do that. We'll wind down hour one. Coach McBride's on the way. It's Hail Varsity Radio.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity Radio this hour. Next hour, the Blackshirt Hour with Hail Varsity. Charlie McBride coming up here in 10 minutes. We'll spend time with Jay Moore. Still room for you to get in. Emails, chris@hailvarsity.com. And Bruce just called in and said, hey, Dylan, you did your job. You brought Nebraska some national relevancy because of you were the number one player in the country, and it went this deep into the recruiting process. That helped Nebraska get some nice mentions with the USCs, with the Georgias of the world, with some of these programs that have been winning at a way higher clip than Nebraska. So,
but on the other hand,
that is what's the word? There's a little moral victory to that, but that's okay. That's okay.
Sometimes moral victories are important whenever you're starting a rebuild.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's going to be a recruit out there who didn't know anything about Nebraska. And now, if Nebraska calls me, I'm going to be interested because Dylan Raiola thought about Nebraska. I don't think that's the case. But I think especially with this recruit, I mean, you got a whole bunch of guys in at the end of March that may have never taken a look at Nebraska otherwise. Brandon Baker's a guy, came into Nebraska. He wasn't wowed by Raiola. I think that may have been part of the reason why he came, but he was wowed by that new facility. He was wowed by what Coach Raiola told him. That's why Nebraska's in the race. It got the foot in the door with some guys. If you can land one commitment because Dylan Raiola got your foot in the door, that's a win on that recruitment, in my humble opinion from Raiola. I don't think the national relevancy is as important to this. I know there's guys out there that follow other kids' recruitments, but at the end of the day, you're going to be focused on your own recruitment, and so many kids will tell you it's about relationships. Can Matt Rhule go out and build a relationship with those guys that may have gotten a foot in the door? I think that's where you could get a win out of this. But there's so much lost time now on this, especially with the quarterback position. That's my main concern. That's why I'm not prepared to call it a win just yet. How behind the eight ball are you with other quarterback recruits that you could have been talking to for the last 6 months, that you could have gotten in the boat for the last 6 months to start their peer recruiting process while you were wasting time talking to Dylan? And I probably shouldn't call it wasted time because there's a chance that he would have ended up here.
We wasted time talking to the... you're right.
But now that you look back, now that he's picked somewhere else, it feels like wasted time. And it wasn't wasted because there was a chance that he would end up at Nebraska. But yeah, you were spinning your wheels on a kid in Dylan that ended up going to Georgia. Not officially yet, but we can assume that that's going to be the landing spot for him. What does Nebraska do now? How do they respond to all the hours that you put into recruiting Dylan Raiola?
You've got to trust your eyes and not knee-jerk. And maybe you like one of these quarterbacks out there. If you can't flip Kalen... Maybe you like the kid from Massachusetts. Maybe you like the other kid. And so be it, from Alabama. And maybe they fit. If not, don't worry about it. Don't go. They didn't take a 2023 quarterback because of the transition. Fine. I don't know if you missed out on a future transfer out or if you missed out on an all-conference performer. Well, we won't know. We got to see how the Pop Williams kid does at Virginia Tech. But Nebraska, and in this era of college football, you can go get a quarterback. You don't want to live that way. I don't think you can live that way clearly on the offensive and defensive lines. You need to high school recruit, develop, and then supplement. You can get away with the quarterback because, honestly, if you go get a high school kid and he's super high level but isn't ready yet, or it takes them a little time to develop, they're not going to stay. So you're going to lose out anyway. So you're going to be fishing in the portal potentially or hoping that you develop somebody that you've had in your program for a while. Nebraska has those guys right now. Hour 2 coming up.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. The topic today, the recruitment of Dylan Raiola to Georgia. The Blackshirt Hour commences. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Monday with Charlie. Coach, how we doing?
I'm doing good. Weather's beautiful.
Ours is not.
Like this, the rest of the summer will be good.
Well, what do you got? Give me the forecast, Coach.
Oh, it's about 72 and no wind, and everybody's out in their boats riding around having a pop before dinner.
I love it. They're going to catch some fish and bring some over, I hope.
That's right. They're fishing. The guys are fished all day. I guess they don't work. I paid bills.
Well, in the modern sense, Charlie, work from home has become work from the boat on a 70-degree day.
Listen, I didn't think I'd have to pay bills when you're retired.
Well, it never stops, unfortunately.
I know, and you have nothing coming in, right?
That's about true. Coach, let's spend a minute here, and I know you follow recruiting, and I know you keep an eye and an ear on Arizona as well, and you know the Raiolas really well, the family, of course. And what are your thoughts as Dylan Raiola, the quarterback, the son of Dominic, has decided to pick Georgia, but it was a long race in this recruiting process, and Nebraska just came a bit short.
Yeah, well, you know, when you get into that stuff, that's that sometimes it can make a difference in your team, and sometimes it can make it better. I think losing a great player is tough, no matter how you cut it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times you find out that it probably was all for the best, and I know his family's very close, and his dad was a great player for us, and really a nice person, and everything, and he would have been a good kid to have on the team. You just wonder if somebody that hard recruited that hard is going to be, unhappy at a place when he's maybe not playing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where you're sitting, and it all sounds good when coaches talk, but it doesn't always work out that way. So it comes down to you as a person, regardless of your parents. I remember when I made a decision to go away from home. If I had it to do all over again, I probably wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
We were successful. I have great friends. I have all the things that come, but when it comes right down to it, I had a laugh. Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day when I was before when I was recruiting my dad's school, which is Denison in Granville, Ohio. I don't even know if they have scholarships. I don't think they do.
Mm-hmm.
But I even considered it, going to school where my dad went, and I didn't, and I went away from home. And here's the thing: my mom and dad only saw me play 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left Arizona State, it was because of my folks and take the Wisconsin job so they could come and at least see our games when I was coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things that are different about it, and you have to make dig your own ditch. In other words, and that's why Dad always used to say, that's fine. We'd like you to stay, but you've got to dig your own ditch. And that's what I did, and that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Coach, from a Nebraska coach's point of view, whenever this kid decides to dig his own ditch and go off to Georgia, how do you respond? Do you continue recruiting a kid like this? I mean, you've put so many man hours into talking to Dylan and recruiting Dylan, and now you can find yourself behind the 8 ball on some other quarterback recruits. How do you respond to losing a high-level recruit that you thought you had a good chance at?
Well, a commitment to us was something completely different than it is now. We respected the other team and didn't recruit them anymore. We were just done.
Mm-hmm.
Once it was over, it was over. Most of the schools were in a position that that their coaches were behind it, their parents were behind it, and they made a commitment to the newspaper that it's coming out. And really, I don't ever remember ever losing a kid after we had him committed. I don't ever remember that kind of thing happening. It was more of a gentleman's agreement that's the way it was. I had a laugh. I had a kid I was recruiting in Chicago, and he this is, it is a joke, but it's not funny. As Lee Corso signed him a week before the conference letter of intent. We had 2 of them then, mm-hmm. Conference and national. And I said to his mom, he can't sign. She said, well, he signed the letter. I said, well, what did he sign? He said, oh, he signed the Italian letter of intent. That's what she told me. She didn't speak good English either, and I thought it was a joke, and it wasn't. Corso went in there with a letter of Italian letter of intent, and he had to sign it, and that was the end of it.
Well, you got even with Lou a couple of times. You guys played him, I think.
Yeah, we did, but it was what Corso was always laughing, he said, what you want to do is you want to play them at home all the time, because when you play them at home, they can play those other guys. But now when they go on the road, he said they don't have all those other guys that come in the game. They have their backups are playing, and they want to win too, and they want a job. And he said you get hammered by them, but too. So, it's not so hot playing them, at home.
Yeah, the travel roster a little smaller, so the backups would go back in, or the starters would have to go back in. Charlie McBride with us. Let's, Coach, a thought about just the pressure of and the hype around a high-profile quarterback. That's part of this discussion, too, not only with the dad's legacy, but his uncle on staff here, but where the Nebraska football program's at right now with what Coach Rhule's trying to do, and that's flip it into a winning football team. You saw guys like Gil, you saw guys like Tommy come in, and you guys at that time were still winning 9, 10, 11 ball games. It was still just a monster, right. But you guys jumped up from winning Big Eights or competing for Big Eights to going and playing for championships and then winning championships. What was that like on those kids? Did they feel the pressure, or was it program wide, just not on them?
The pressure, is not on as much on the players probably as it is on the coaches sometimes. The coaches have all that in mind. The players don't pay any attention to that. They're playing with Joe Blow, and he's going to be our best. He's our best quarterback, and we're going to win with him. Mm-hmm. Where and I don't think that the coaches are going to fall out the window, because he went to Georgia. I think they'll feel bad. I think they worked hard, and you feel bad about it, And you don't. I mean, I've had more no's than yes. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And so, you understand, you understand it. I never went back on a kid. I just felt like, listen, why ruin his life by making him saying things? A lot of people will say things that aren't true. Mm-hmm. You have to be honest with him. And with the way the portal is, he's liable to be here next year. I mean, it's crazy the way they've got it set up. You never know what's going to happen. But I think the best thing to do is be a gentleman about it, and wish him the best they could do, and hope that maybe someday, if he is a great player and he's only a second teamer, but he's a great player still, and they have a great player. If they have a guy that's a Georgia kid, let's put it that way,
sure,
and he's from Arizona, and they're both good. Who do you think's going to play?
Yeah, good question. The Georgia kid, probably, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be one of those things where he has an advantage going to Nebraska. His dad was played here. That makes him a Nebraska kid. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's where he has, if there's an equal somewhere along the way, they're going to stick up for his dad, if they were both equal. And so there's all kinds of little corners that you have to turn in recruiting, and you have to, you have to be a man about it. If you lose a kid, if you go off the air and start hollering and jumping up and down, that doesn't never made any sense. It hurts. When they tell you that was the thing, just because you work so hard on them. Mm-hmm. But it's that kid's decision, and it's his life. And that's the way I always looked at it. I guess I looked at it, I was young enough when I started out recruiting, and I felt that way when I was 50 years old recruiting, that, you don't want to mess with their lives. If that's what they want to do, let them do it. That's the way it is. I told the kid from Michigan, I said, I all the way up to the day before the signing, he's coming to Nebraska, and he turned around and went back to Michigan to his own home school, and I had no qualms about it. If he had gone to Notre Dame, I'd have choked him, but I'd have felt in. I mean, but I felt like here, when you really think about it, what are we doing? We're trying to keep all our kids at home. So are they. Well, and that's just the way it is.
Well, Charlie McBride's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. You mentioned the fact that you want to keep the hometown kids home, and that's one of the things that was a problem in this recruitment is Nebraska told a local kid, Daniel Kalen, that, hey, we like you, but we don't like you as much as we like Dylan, and we're going to be straight up, we're going to be honest with you, and we're going to tell you that he's our number one priority right now. And as a result, Daniel Kalen ended up committing to Missouri. And what's your reaction to that, knowing that Nebraska was this interested in Dylan and told a hometown kid, essentially, you can't be our priority while we're recruiting Dylan Raiola? Does that make it hurt more, the fact that Dylan leaves and goes to Georgia?
Right. I sometimes wonder that if you should do that. If you start comparing kids to kids when you're young, mm-hmm. they take pretty much seriously. I feel like that's not a good thing maybe to do myself. I wouldn't do it. Because they play in a different league, they play in a different town, they play the whole show's different. And you're just hoping that great player is a great player. Now you look at the Michigan State quarterback. I thought he was a good player, mm-hmm. and last year he didn't do the things that they expected him to do. He went into the portal. Whether he's there or not, I don't know anymore. But I haven't heard anything in Michigan about it. But he was their starting quarterback, I think, for a couple of years, and all of a sudden things went haywire, and he went into the transfer portal, and that's scary to me anyway, because a lot of the kids I think that are great kids that are at Nebraska now, you hate to see them leave.
Mm-hmm. Coach, what's the week look like for you? You got any fishing plans? You got some chicken wings you're going to fire up?
No, I'm just gonna be the normal American citizen. I'm just gonna stay and do my duty. I vacuum every morning. That's what I have to do. I vacuum. Mm. I do, and I take the garbage out. and now I got some neighbors to talk to because the people are coming back, so it's kind of fun, But I guess when those guys come and visit, mm-hmm. I'll probably get my fishing stuff out and see if they're any good.
That's the way to do it. Little trick for you, if you want to get out of vacuuming, just maybe take your shoes and socks off and vacuum your sock up. I haven't had to vacuum in 20 years.
Hey, it's fun. They got some new vacuums out that are pretty good, too.
No, I know they do. We got like 3 of them at home. So they got. Don't tick off the vacuum repairman. You bring it in and it's all beat up, and he just looks at you like you've ruined one of his kids.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I think when you do that stuff, it makes it tough.
No, I think you're right.
Charlie, I tell you what, I'm waiting for the new Tesla vacuum that drives itself. That's what I'm waiting for.
There he goes. Coach, you take care. All right, we'll check in with you next Monday.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you then. Have fun this week.
We will. You take care.
Okay. You bet. Bye now.
There he is. Coach, look at him, man. He's got a 5-star vacuum, baby.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Blackshirt Husker NFLer, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up Jay Moore joins us. Jay Bird, the news of the day is Dylan Raiola, and I want to step on Ray Charles's toes, but Georgia on his mind as he says, yes, what? You don't want me to sing Ray?
You got to do the impersonation too. You're on camera.
No,
Jamie Foxx style.
No, that was an incredible movie, and Ray Charles was phenomenal. And I remember the Blues Brothers, where the scene with Ray is putting up the one night only concert where the Blues Brothers are to perform, and Ray's putting the poster upside down. It's a little crooked, but it was all in good fun. So, what do you think of this? Elijah and I have spent the first hour hitting on this, and we're not really that surprised. It was close enough. If you're a Nebraska fan, you can be absolutely frustrated or disappointed, but you really can't be shocked just because of where the programs are at. That's kind of how I'm processing all of this. And, we bump into a lot of Nebraska fans, and you're going to have different takes depending on the fan. But you know what? Georgia's just too incredible right now for them not to get a number one player overall.
Yeah, obviously would have loved for him to come to Lincoln and, play alongside his uncle here and play where his pops played. But it's hard, when you're comparing us to Georgia and USC. I can't fault the guy besides obviously the family dynamic of it. And I thought that would be an important factor. And I think that's what got him back into the ball game after the previous staff kind of screwed things up a little bit. Having his dad and uncle and then Rhule kind of reaching back out and reconnecting things. So I think they were afraid a little bit with the previous staff. But you look over at overall, Lincoln Riley at USC, what he's able to do with quarterbacks, you knew that was going to be a tough thing to compete against. And obviously with Georgia, national champions, they're the belle of the ball right now, and they are the best. They're getting the best recruits year in, year out. The NIL money is very, very powerful with Georgia, as it is here and as it is at USC. But you got to kind of weigh everything in general. And if you want to play and compete with the best, play in maybe more of a pro-style offense, I think I don't know exactly what this Rhule offense and Satterfield offense is going to look like, but I envision a little more QB run, and maybe that wasn't what Dylan wanted to be featured as. I don't know that, but I'm just trying to think out loud here and just think of other reasons why, besides Nebraska being a 4-8 football team for the last few years, to make this decision for him. But I can't fault him for picking Georgia. You can't do it. Interesting thing is going to be is that QB room they have is that cupboard is not bare. So there's going to be a lot of competition, and whether he could potentially transfer in a couple of years or other quarterbacks out of that room. And we've kind of had a nice little Georgia pipeline going this last year. So it'll be interesting to see how this, the domino effect, with Dylan going there could potentially make some roster moves within that QB room. But yeah, number one recruit, you'd love to see him come here, but you weigh everything. That's the only thing that he had here was the family dynamic. And I know that's very important to him, and it should be with every kid that is, being recruited here. If their uncle coaches and their dad plays, I think that would be high on your list to consider. But winning championships is important. Going to the NFL is very, very important. Being the best player you can be is important. I think Rhule and Satterfield and everyone else in general will get guys to that, but we don't know that yet. Everything is just hearsay. Everything is we're still in that honeymoon phase. We haven't seen what it's going to look like when you have to, you're playing for every snap, and every point is tallied at the end of the game, and wins and losses matter. So I think if Rhule was probably here the year previous, I think maybe it's a little different story because you have a little more street credibility to what you're saying and what you're going to do as an offense, and you might get a better look. But Nebraska got a hell of a shot. He was here at the basketball games, at some of the spring ball practices. They rolled out the red carpet for him. They did everything they could to try to get him. But at the end of the day, Georgia, USC, whoever, they're just better football programs than us right now, plain and simple. And I hope that changed rather quickly. But until then, we're going to get beat out by a lot of the Georgias and the USCs and the Alabamas and Ohio States because they win more football games than us, and that's important for kids to go to universities and programs where you're winning 10, 11, 12 games a year, playing for conference championships, and get invited to, the college football playoff, even when it's at 4 teams. I know it's expanding here in a couple of years, but winning's important, and it should be for every kid that considers coming here or wherever they go.
Jay Moore is with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, I want to get your take on kind of how I'm rationalizing this and if it makes sense what I'm about to say. I feel like Raiola would have been a huge, huge win for Matt Rhule and for Nebraska should he have committed. But the fact that he's going off to Georgia is not a big loss because of all the things Nebraska needs to focus on before they focus on the quarterback position, the lines of scrimmage, getting the rushing attack in check, just making yourself look more like a Big Ten team. Is that a fair way of putting this and how this recruitment has ended?
Yeah, that's always going to be important. You have to get the lines of scrimmage figured out. You have to establish that. You got to build that foundation of your football team first and foremost. You have to have the best offensive line and defensive line year in and year out in the Big Ten. As long as you have that, your team's going to be pretty darn good, and they're going to be able to compete and are probably playing for conference championships in December. But until then, and Nebraska doesn't. You could argue that Iowa definitely, has better offensive lines. Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern just had another first rounder, and Skoronski just was drafted this year. So until Nebraska gets better players, into the NFL offensive line wise, I know what's his face went to the Eagles last year as a 2nd round pick, but I tell you, you got to develop that, and that will probably wait on him too. I come here and. I might not have time to throw the football. We're gonna be able to establish a run game. And those had to weigh on his decision. But again, Georgia has top offensive lines. So does USC. Probably has a really good offensive line. The best programs have good offensive lines. I don't care who we're talking about. Alabama's, Ohio State's. They're sending guys in the first 2 rounds, multiples every year, offensive line, defensive line, and that's why they're the best of the best. And until Nebraska can start doing that, we're gonna be fighting to win, 6, 7, 8 games a year.
Jay Moore's with us at JMoore44, where you follow him on Twitter. You watch him with Big Red Wrap Up. The dynamic of each program that was in this race, and we talked about it in hour 1. Just where did Nebraska finish? It doesn't matter. They didn't win the race, so to speak, to get Dylan Raiola, but they were in it as long as they could have been. They were in it longer than many expected. I mean, they have no business being a 4-8 football team, being absent from bowl season for 6 years, being this deep into the process. To your points, Jay, about the family dynamic and really the work Rhule and his staff put in. But there's different pressures associated. You go to USC, and you're supposed to be the next Heisman winner, the next Rose Bowl champion, and then even you're making a transition, presumably, if you don't leave for the NFL, to the Big Ten from the Pac-12. That's if you go to USC. Georgia did a hell of a job to get this quarterback away from Lincoln Riley with his track record the last 3 NFL drafts, or 3 of the last 4 NFL drafts. You got one looming here with Caleb. You look at Georgia, and you have the top quarterbacks from 2022 and 2023, and already a top 15 quarterback for 2024 that is in this. The Ryan Puglisi player out of the East Coast. So you're coming in, and that quarterback room is loaded with really, really talented dudes. So that's a kudos to Dylan not being afraid of competition. You're also surrounded with an incredible defense, 5-star skill guys, and high-level offensive line, and a running game that Georgia puts a guy into the 1st or 2nd round or 3rd round as a running back too. So you've got the complete set here. You've got offense, you got defense, you got O-line, you have running game. And then there's come be the savior. Okay, that's what was attached in a lot of people's minds with Nebraska, not only the family connection, but be that next Tommy Frazier, be that next Turner Gill. And, the fishbowl of Nebraska, this is the state's pro team and college team. That's a hell of a lot to process and deal with. Georgia's a tough nut to go in and win a job, and good luck to him. I hope he does. Nebraska's its own different animal. USC's its own different animal. There's a lot attached to this earned number one player overall.
Yeah, I got to imagine it wasn't an easy decision for him. He had to weigh everything. I know he wanted to get it done before he starts playing this fall. Mm. But you hit it. I mean, that's the biggest thing is, the family dynamic. There was, I think all three places had really interesting reasons why he should go to those places. Mm-hmm. Nebraska had the family dynamic. I know in their family that's very important. And then you have USC and Lincoln Riley and his history with quarterbacks and sending them to being first round draft picks and Heisman Trophy winners. And then you have Georgia that's has been the best team the last couple of years in college football. And I don't think, I think NIL probably had something to do with it, but I think everyone had their place at the table for it. I bet you teams weren't that far off.
The three schools we're talking about won't get outbid by anybody but these other two.
Right. Probably. Yes, correct. So it just has to come down to a gut decision because I think, like I said, every place if he would have chosen USC, why. If he chose Nebraska, why. If he chooses Georgia, there's rationale for every place. So it just has to be about fit and just connection and the ability to see yourself getting better. And honestly, and knowing what it's going to be. And that's probably the only knock against Nebraska. You don't know what it's going to be yet. You can say it and you can verbalize it and show film and do all these things. But until you actually see it be done for real, it's still hard to trust for an 18-year-old or 17 or 18-year-old kid. So that was probably Nebraska's one downfall in this whole thing, other than, struggling in the wins and loss column the last couple of years. But going to Georgia and knowing that you're going to be able to compete for a starting job as a freshman and win championships and know you're going to be there for the SEC championship year in and year out, and you're going to be playing in the college football playoff year in, year out, that's tough to beat.
Let me get your take. Different situation, but the pressure associated with playing for Nebraska. I'd like your thought on that. You were a homegrown talent that grew up wanting to come here. Dylan was seen as a guy that could expedite a return to glory.
Yeah, this place it's special. I've known this place. Nebraska was a special place, since I can remember. That's why I wanted to play football here since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I was fortunate enough to be able to live out those dreams. And I did my best to hold up my end of the bargain and try to leave this place better than I found it and get it back to what I knew it as a kid. We were pretty dang close, but obviously things changed rather drastically after the 2006 season. But with that being said, I never felt pressure. I'll say that. It was just, I wanted to, and maybe it's just a different way I viewed pressure, but I just wanted to do my best for the state and do the best for what the guys that played before me that I looked up to. So when they they turned the game on Saturday afternoons, they're like, that guy could have played, with us during our time. That's what I wanted to do. And obviously just win. And there was nothing better than making a play in Memorial Stadium in front of 90,000 people and having that place go crazy. There's no better feeling. And just the fans, and I've been to other places, NFL, being with the 49ers, the 49er fans are good. It's just being at Nebraska is different. A lot of NFL teams can't hold a candle to University of Nebraska. It just doesn't. And it's because it's different. Like you said, we are the only pro team. You are the only college team. And there's 16 games. You can screw up a couple games throughout the year and still make the playoffs and still get a chance to the Super Bowl. That's 12 games it's all you get in college, and that's very, very important. And then you only get 7 of them at home throughout the year as well. So that makes them even more special at Memorial Stadium. So the pressure, yeah, it's just I think everyone views it differently. And if you prepare the right way and just try to get better every day and just got to almost get lost in it all and not worry about the pressure. Like I've always told you guys, once you're in college, man, I didn't have time to think about the fan base, man.
I was get to the next hour of my day, right?
Right. You're just going to class. You broke it up, hour by hour. Okay, I got, it's Wednesday. I have these 2 classes, and then I got to get a lift in, and then I got to get taped, and I got to grab lunch, and I got to get to meetings, and I get to practice, and then I have to get this paper done for this class on Thursday. So you had so many other things that you were consumed with that pressure was the least of my concerns, and I just knew if I did my part and prepared the way I needed to prepare and do what the coaches asked of me and show up on time and give my best effort and just try to get better every day. It was going to be enough, and you just have to trust that. So, it's just I think everyone deals with pressure and how they view it a little differently, and I think pressure is a good thing. I think if you feel because it makes you prepared, and if you fold to it, then you probably aren't. You're not going to be that good of a player in the first place if you're folding to pressure. That's what you're concerned about. I think every good player and a competitor wants to have pressure because that means you're in a purposeful, meaningful moment. And you're doing something right for the most part. And so I wouldn't go too far on the weeds on pressure.
Jay, if you can remember, you just said you don't want to go too far into the weeds, but I'm going to take you a little further into the weeds. Do you remember how Zach Taylor dealt with pressure during his time at Nebraska? Because he's a guy that's proven he's been able to stand up to pressure, both in college and now during his time as head coach of the Bengals in the NFL. He's clearly a guy that is no stranger to that pressure. And I want to get your thoughts. Do you remember any specific way that he tried to deal with it?
It was kind of like water off a duck's back, man. Like nothing got to him. And that's what some of the good ones, like I said, you realize it, but it doesn't affect you. Because that's the beauty of it when you do everything you can. You put everything you have into it. And whatever happens, how the cards are dealt, the cookie crumbles, whatever saying you want, at the end of the day, win or loss, you kind of you got to move on because you've done everything, right? You've done everything you possibly could. Yeah, sure. You have maybe made that as a quarterback, maybe, not throw that one interception or you hit that one, that one receive, make a better decision, make a better throw, make a better audible, whatever it may be. But sometimes once you get down to it, it's like, man, I did everything I could, and you can just live with it because you prepared the right way. And sometimes, the ball doesn't bounce your way. But Zach was never, he did not let the pressure beat him up. And gosh, sounding old, but it was a little different time frame, right? I mean, there's barely any social media. If you wanted to read about yourself or read something, you had to read it on a piece of paper. There was no social media. There was none of that stuff. So I think him being a head coach in the NFL is obviously vastly different than him being quarterback here. But it just showed you how good a coach he is, though, too, because in high pressure situations, his teams are usually pretty darn good and pretty competitive. And that's just the way he was as a quarterback, because you can make too much out of it. You can put the game, you can kind of raise it, you can make a bigger situation, put it on a pedestal and say, oh my gosh, this is the situation. But when it comes down to it, I think the best ones just can simplify it. It's football. Mm-hmm. Prepare the right way. As a quarterback, do what you can do, control what you can control, make the right calls, make the right throws. As a defensive guy, do your job. You do your job, and hopefully all the 10 other guys in your team are doing this, have the same thoughts and doing their job too. And that's the case, you're usually gonna be on top.
Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, Big Red Ramp Up at JMoore44. Jay, good to chat, man. Good stuff as always, bud. We'll run you down again. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Yep. Thanks, fellas.
Good stuff from Jay. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel winding down this Blackshirt Hour at Hail Varsity Radio. 489-1240. More emails and comments to get into as it's just loaded up as you'd imagine in the stream. Moonbot, always a voice on Saturdays, chimes in, says Raiola is going to fail at Georgia. Imagine being compared to the recent Golden Boy walk-on who won 2 natties. Anything less will be considered a failure. I believe Giannis says that if you don't win it, doesn't mean it's a failure. Right? Did Giannis go there when he was asked about it after the Bucks got eliminated?
And then Joel Embiid quoted him, and everyone called Joel Embiid a loser. Yeah. But I think the point that Moonbot's making there is like Frank Solich following up Tom Osborne. Anything you did that was short of a national championship is going to be considered failure. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily that the guy's going to be bad at Georgia, but it's a tough act to follow.
Well, it is absolutely a tough act. You've got Jasper's stepdad, Elijah's spot on. This is back from hour 1. Let's hope this is the last time or showtime that's spent talking about Dylan. Thanks for the compliment there, Jasper's stepdad. Hey, we've tried to keep you up to date on where it's at. And, it is Dylan to Georgia Day.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, live show video feed, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed. Thanks so much for everyone's input here on the StreamYard, emails, phone calls. Good discussion today on the Dylan Raiola news. We'll get to a couple more comments. Brady Oltman's going to join us tomorrow morning locally on KFOR. Get his take. He does an amazing job running down recruiting with HailVarsity.com and magazine. I don't know. I need to ask Redwine65 if this is the red wine, as in Jarvis red wine. Maybe not. It's okay. But he said he wasn't expecting Raiola to go to Nebraska at 3-9 over back-to-back national championship Georgia. I'm glad he picked, so Rhule can now focus on the next quarterback. And the thought is this: I mean, you've got to jump in and talk portal now. Your 2024 quarterback, 2025 quarterback, Stone
Saunders. Yeah, I messed that up back in our one. He is 2025.
Yeah, that's okay. Stone Saunders, though, is a 4-star, and Stone's just tweeting out pictures of him and Coach Rhule. That's what's been in the timeline for a lot of Nebraska fans here the last couple of hours. So Stone Saunders, help me out. Where's he from? I looked him up 100 years ago because he visited like over the winter. He was a 2025 kid that Rhule was looking at.
Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
That's right. And Pennsylvania is known for producing a fair share of quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Just a touch.
And as for Stone, he was 2021's second-team freshman All-American, according to Max Preps.
Oh, wow.
So he had a big freshman year, as I laid out in first hour, high 3-star, low 4-star, depending on where you look at it. And he seemed excited today by the news that Dylan Raiola was not going to be going to Nebraska. So read into that how you will.
Dylan, can I help you pack? Tomorrow.
Maybe it's a case of Matt Rhule saying, hey, you're not our top priority. It's got to be Dylan Raiola. But, hey, if he goes somewhere else,
we'll stay in touch. My people will contact your people. Here's the deal. You have good stuff, really good stuff from Jay Moore today. Charlie McBride weighed in, and we spent the first hour talking. Tomorrow we'll get Mitch Sherman's thoughts from a national standpoint, and a guy that's hosted all of the ESPNU recruiting shows, Matt Schick, going to join us. There's also saber rattling within the ACC. You have Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, and Virginia all screaming about the ACC, and they're exploring their grant of rights deal right now. They want out. They want to go somewhere else, or they want to get paid. And if you're the Big Ten, you absolutely looking at scooping up who you like best here versus the Oregons and Washingtons of the world. You already got what you want from the Pac-12 and SC and UCLA. So, I don't know. Clemson and Florida State and North Carolina, the U, Virginia, very prestigious. Might have some conference realignment chats tomorrow. Talk to you at 4. Thanks for spending time with Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.